Maggie though.
Yeah, yeah, is there any way to get the panelists that are? Yeah,
Yeah.
so it is 9:30 and I'm going to go ahead and start us off. If we can just take a minute to center ourselves and. Okay. So I understand that Maggie and Jane are attending via Zoom. Um, and I just along those lines, we're just talking, you may have heard it. If you are attending by Zoom, I think it would be great if we could see you. Be easier for me to notice if you needed to say something. Otherwise, you're just going to have to rely on you breaking in somehow. Um, but if you don't, that's. And I want to apologize to everybody for being at the last minute. I was kind of distracted by the whole uh, land care, plant sale, Arbor Day thing, and didn't do things in a timely way. So first item of business is agenda adoption. It's should have a copy with you that I sent it out yesterday. It's a very generic agenda, and if you have specific things that you want to make sure we talk about, now would be a good time to inject that or the agenda will adopt it. So is there anybody that has a change they'd like to make?
Well, we won't be able to swear in Maggie today, right? That's on the agenda.
That's true. Okay, hearing no changes, then do I hear a motion to adopt the agenda as is?
I'll make a motion to adopt the agenda.
Any objection? Hearing none, agenda is adopted. It stands. Minutes. Provided copy of minutes. I did notice myself one change. It was just the bottom line. On item number 8 on the third page, it says next meeting, March 22nd. That was actually the date of that meeting. So it actually should read April 26th, which is today. I haven't noticed any other changes myself. Does anybody want to take a moment to read it over? That's okay too.
It's good.
Okay, so I'm hearing no other than that one change that I introduced. I'm not hearing any need for anything else. Is there a motion for adopting the?
A second.
All those in favor? And I see no public unless our tech person has comments to make. Okay. So we're moving down to reports. Well, let me say before we go any further, I think we're probably not going to have a real long meeting today. I'm not aware of great issues. We do need to look at our future, a bigger piece of conversation. Just a planning for what we're going to do in the next couple of months. So on reports, Public Works Director.
One thing I have to report is we planted the chestnut seeds. And we've got a couple of dates for the Ivy League, which
Okay. Town Administrator, Ben, do you have any?
No, sir, not this time.
Okay, Chair. Okay, so a few things. I want to say that I remember Grace Nichols conspired with my wife, Jean Norris, and did what everybody says was a really great native plants and Arbor Day celebration on Saturday. And from my point of view, it was really good. People seem to be having a time. Every report I heard from vendors and presenters was that it was better than they expected. More than one vendor said it started off slow and they were a little concerned about how to go, but then it picked up. And I saw some who didn't have much to take home. So that was good stuff. The one thing for me that was not as what I had hoped for was that the American Chestnut Foundation was not present. I had hoped that we would have presentations from them late in the game, like with less than a week to go. They had an exposure to COVID that happened at a board meeting or something like that, and had decided that they could not go for concern of exposing other people to things. So well, just I'm really wanting to build our relationship with the American Chestnut Foundation. I talked to Jane on Saturday, and we were both kind of feeling that maybe what we should do is to try to make arrangements to go to the Chestnut Foundation someday before too long, sit down with them, have a meeting and see what we can do to move things along a little bit. It was Jane and I talking, but I don't know if they could handle like a whole bunch of people coming at once. I'll check that out. But if you're interested in joining such a visit, please let me know, and we'll certainly keep you in mind. More about chestnuts. So Barry reported planting the seed. We got 5 seeds and 4. Okay. I had thought it's kind of a fundraiser thing that they do each year for people who are members, give you an opportunity to buy bare root seedlings. And I bought 5 of those. And I've got 5 little chestnut trees on my porch at the moment. They look like that they're probably gonna produce some leaves. I think they're pretty much the same thing that we have in the ground up at Moorfield and overhead at the water place. Rain garden, thank you. And so in the future, we'll be looking for a place to put those in the ground along with them. So I'm feeling we're going to be having more and more chestnuts around the valley. And somebody was telling me on Saturday that I think it's up on Appalachian, somewhere up in that degree, that he's aware of a number of little chestnuts that come up and sprout, the kind of things that are survivors from times past. You know, that when the tree dies, but the roots stay alive, and then periodically you get the little suckers coming up, and those can last for sometimes decades, long enough to get some seed out of them. So one of the things that I've been working on is to like with during the summertime, the MRA has their ranger college kids mostly that come and help tend trails and do activities and things. And I'm going to see if we can get going with them on getting volunteers who can be trained to recognize chestnut trees and find them. We'll get, when we locate them, then we'll try to locate them via GPS and have them in a database so that we can revisit the same trees and see how they're doing over time. And so start being part of this scientific enterprise that's going on. It's a part of what the Chestnut Foundation wants to do is find the local trees like that that are surviving, collect leaf samples, seed if they have them. They will do DNA tests on them to identify what exactly they are. And ultimately, when they have been successful in developing truly resistant trees, then they can, the next step would be to match them, cross them with these existing strains that are around, so that ultimately Montreat would have Montreat-based chestnut trees that are resistant. Of course, we're not talking about next week or in the next 10 years. This is truly a long-term project, but it's you know, at least it seems like it's a doable thing at this point.
Could I ask a couple of questions about
Sure.
chestnut? Is the blight still hanging around that endangers some of the chestnuts that somehow have made it through the years? You know?
Yes, it is still around. And there are actually 2 pathogens that will or can damage trees or kill the trees. One of them is the chestnut blight. It's a fungus. And the other one is a thing called Phytophthora, I think it is. It's a fungus-like entity. But it's not actually a fungus, but it causes root rot. And it's a very broad spectrum kind of thing.
Rhododendrons, you see a lot of that in our rhododendron stock that we have in our woods too. You can, a sickly looking rhododendron, a lot of times you'll pull it out of the ground and it'll be 0 roots. And it'll just be a stalk right down to the main roots that used to be, and no feeder roots or anything on it. It's a nasty disease.
So it's the same disease. It's attacking the rhododendron now.
Yeah, it's a broad spectrum. It covers, there's many plants that it can infect.
Really? And my other question was, has science really gotten us now a blight resistant seed? Is that what you're
Yes.
planning that they're saying?
We're moving in that direction. I would recommend to everybody looking at the chestnut chat that is that you can access via the American Chestnut Foundation website. They began a couple of years ago. It was not long before COVID arrived. They started these chestnut chats as a monthly thing, and many different topics, but there's a lot of history there. There's a lot of description of what the science is that the working with to develop the resistance. And some of these questions can be answered if you look at those. There's more than 30 of these chestnut chat things, and they run just about an hour each week. So it take you a while to work through that. There's like early on they had 65 people. I've been on there at times when there was more than 100 people participating in the chats, and they're really pretty high level with the science. And if you're not a science minded person, which I don't consider myself to be that science friendly, but not knowledgeable a lot of times, but if you have, even if you don't have background in that kind of way, it can be a very educational thing to listen at the chestnut chats. I get over every time I get over my head at some point, but I don't regret it because I learn a lot in the process. So just to basically respond to your questions, Phil, the blight is still there. Pretty much anything we put in the ground is going to get the blight. And
Really?
yeah, it'll, if the smaller trees will probably might be outright killed. If they've had a chance to establish a root system, then they may become a long-term survivor, like I was talking about a while ago, so that they're not necessarily visible if you were to walk by, but every once in a while they get it together to send up shoots, and those produce trees. That is part of what we're trying to locate. There's thousands of chestnut trees around. I don't know how many we have here, but just on Saturday, somebody was telling me there's near where he lives, there's several chestnut trees that he knows about. So,
And is it possible to see the blight as it starts to grow and then treat it chemically or
Yeah.
something?
chemical treatment doesn't really work.
Oh, really?
No. It gets a.
So there's not a
it gets
treat,
it
there's
gets
not
a
a
kind of a
treatment.
canker. It looks like a swelling on the
Really?
trunk of the tree. It ultimately girdles the tree so that the nutrients and all can't get on up, and that's what kills the tree, and the point that it girdles.
Hmm.
And that will happen pretty much to anyone. They do have now, though, there's this approach that they call back cross. So they take a native chestnut and they cross it with a Chinese chestnut, which does have blight resistance. And so then you get the next generation is a blight resistant, or at least partially blight resistant tree. And then gradually taking that resistance that came along with that and crossing it again with another native tree and another native tree, until you get to the point where the trees you have are mostly resistant. And it's the seed that Barry was talking about are seeds that are the current state of the art in terms of the resistance. They're, if you get, they, if you join them, the foundation as a what they call a seed member, then they send you seeds on a yearly basis. And that's what Barry's got in pots up by his shop. It's these resistant seeds that were sent because Montreat joined a year ago. So,
I didn't mean to send us off on a tangent, but this is very helpful. Thank you.
no,
Thank you
it's
both.
not really a tangent. It's a big piece of what we're about.
Well, thank you.
Uh,
I'll let us get on with the meeting. Thank you very much.
no, it's good to ask questions.
It draws the need to have an educational event, not only training for the board, but for other people and that's the only way we can do it. And it's unfortunate, although we don't always have huge crowds at the native plant sale. And Samantha would be an outstanding person. And I know that it was very disappointing that she couldn't come. But I do think you have to reach out to the public, and if we're going to learn something, but we need to learn along with others. So
Thank you.
I think that's where we want to start, is having, maybe not at a meeting, but to have information, even if you're the source of it, let's have a chestnut chat in Montreat.
Yes, and what I'm thinking about is drawing on the resources we have, which is a foundation. This is part of building the relationship I was talking about a while ago. And I would like to get people from the foundation who can come meet with the community. We'll have to create an event that for that purpose. Samantha is a good person. I forget exactly what her title is. She's more promotional, I think, in terms of her role. And there's also the other person is Jamie Van Cleef, who is the regional science coordinator for that. So she works with volunteers. She also is out there working with the people that are doing the science. And just south of Asheville, there's a orchard where they call it the Resistance Screening Center. They take new seedlings or seeds that have been found and plant them and see how they do over time, whether they are resistant to the Phytophthora, whether they're resistant to the blight, kind of figure out what's going on with the particular new thing that they have, and then they deal with it accordingly, get into the whole system. Actually, on Saturday, reason Jamie wasn't here was because they had a pre-planned planting event. There's a whole bunch of volunteers that were at the Resistance. No, it wasn't there, but there's another orchard that's a little further south and west, whose name I forget, but they had this event where they planted 350 trees on Saturday. Just a bunch of volunteers. And as we get more involved with that, we'll know in advance and we'll have the opportunity to participate with them. So, I'm trying to see if there's anything else I should be mentioning. Coming to mind at the moment. We've kind of turned the corner with the plant sale, and now it's time for us to start looking down the way at other things that we need to be focusing on. Sure.
What would your participation be in the plant sale? You at one time wanted the Arbor Day celebration to be separate. I don't know that there was a participation from the board other than with Samantha. So how is that relationship going further? I know at one time September would be an obviously wonderful time, which we had to cancel at Labor Day last year because it appears that the direction that the tree board, which is not really one of the entities, the town is the entity and the tree board is the committee. So the relationship with the native plant sale, other than the declaration, it appears that at some point you wanted to have, or from past discussions from previous meetings last year, that the Arbor Day celebration could be one centered just with tree board, because we were going to have one here with no other committee, not even land care, having a function. It would be, and then we had to, she canceled as well as we did because of COVID. But I would like to make a suggestion that at the next month's meeting, that we have a discussion about what is our relationship with the town, with the Federation, and perhaps have educational events and let those wonderful people from the Federation come to even one of our meetings. So
So-
I don't think there was any celebration, unfortunately, because we didn't have one with Samantha not being there.
It was there, but it was not the forefront thing. So, yeah, so we had planned for last year to have, or we were going to try to have the dual event in September and have it focus mostly on the Chestnut relationship. But then again, because of the pandemic, those plans were scrapped. I had been thinking that this event that we had on Saturday was going to be what that would have been. But this focus got to be on pollinators, and it became a much broader thing. And as it turned out, that probably was a good thing because the foundation came up against stuff at the end.
And I will say at the Land Care Committee, we had that brought up and we were discussing whether it should be emphasis just for the Chestnut or the tree board's presentation and let that be the big focus. And it was the consensus, and even a motion was made that we needed to be sure that the native plant sale was for all types of gardening, for pollination. Many people knew that part of this, I mean, if we're having a hard time getting our seeds going here, it's hard to have a native plant sale without a plant. So we knew we couldn't have just the focus of the tree, of the chestnut tree. So that was something that was made by the committee as a vote to expand and not just have it for the chestnut. It's just to clarify.
I would like to, can you hear me?
Yes.
I would just like to make a few comments too. Native plant sale day was wonderful. And I also agree that, you know, we probably do need to look into the fall for a time when the tree board can focus really on our chestnut tree. And I really like the idea of having programs that the community can invest in. But for me, I need to get up to speed where Brad is before I can totally jump in. So I'm going to need a little education before. But I also want to, I was not able to attend the slideshow that Brad had on the chestnut tree. But Hugh went, and he came back and told me he learned a whole lot from that. So Brad, I want a private showing on that slideshow.
It's that what I did was because this was kind of almost a last minute thing to say, what am we going to do at the time if the Chestnut people are not going to be here? I went to the Chestnut Chat, and that was Chestnut Chat number 7 that I showed, which is one that talks about how to find trees and what to do with them after you found them. So it's a good point, Jane. We could, I mean, I've been in the back of my mind, I'm telling myself, yes, this is the tree board, but we're not all about chestnuts. You know, and there are other things that we should be paying attention to and educating ourselves about. And at the same time, I think chestnuts is a good thing for us to also be focusing on and educating ourselves about that. So I think we would profit from taking some time to, how are we going to do this? You know, what are the things we need to be educating ourselves about, and you know, then develop a plan on doing that. So it's a good point, Jane. Was there something else you were wanting to say?
Well, just also that how fortunate we are to have Daniel and Barry, and soon a new member that will be an arborist. And so I think we have some great resources. We just need to come up with our plans.
Okay. So I guess that's it for reports. Moving on to old business. We have a secretary who's not a member of the board because Maggie has been unable to attend to get herself sworn in. And I think Maggie had intended to be here today, but again, it's having issues. So I think, well, Maggie, I think I would like to consult with you some after the meeting, and you know, we can think together about how we could get the official stuff taken care of, so we can go ahead and take care of doing business. So those 2 items, swearing in and the election of officers, will need to wait. So 2022 planning. I included a copy of the calendar again that we've been working from. Refer to it yourself. So we're now finishing our April meeting, and you'll see that May is doesn't have an agenda thing, a main topic about it. What I'd like to do is just kind of be looking at what we have here and see if there's any adjustments we need to be made or additions that we want to do. And so I think I'd just open it up and see if anybody present has any thoughts about what we want to do going forward. Okay, so looking what is on the paper, we see June and July feature cottagers. June is presentation planning, and July is it says informational meeting. I don't actually know the date of the current. Do you know?
Ellen Dean is the president of the Cottagers Inc. And traditionally, in the past, cottagers have had a July meeting the Saturday after the 4th, which is not going to happen. And August was the election of officers, but the big crowd of people are coming in that week of July 4th. But to mesh it together, they put in July 23rd, which is a Saturday. So that means they put everything together as they did last year. And so it's very little time for any type of information to be given other than just being around the side and having your booths. Now, I think Ann Vincent did 2 of them last year because we were also selling our cottagers or addendums and the tree board. And then the land care was on the other side of the room, and we had the land care fair. It's a lot of, it's crammed. You have the entities speaking, the mayor, the college president, Richard DeBose at the conference center. And that's what people want to hear from those entities and what's going on. So I have no idea how any month of June being presentation planning be other than having a table with what information that you want to have as a tree board. But Ellen Dean is the contact person. If there's even a 5-minute, like a Monterey minute, but have it as something from the tree board. Land care would be happy to facilitate that, but I'm assuming the tree board wants to be their own spokesperson. So Brad, you would need to talk to Ellen as to what you would like the tree board to do.
Okay, I think that's a
Just
good
one
point.
cottagers meeting this summer, only one.
And that's, you say, July 23rd?
I hope that's a Saturday.
It is. And actually, see, our meetings are the last Tuesday of the month, right?
4th Tuesday. isn't it?
Always the
Well,
4th.
4th, yeah,
Not always, there's 5 sometimes. It's
Yeah.
always the 4th.
the last except when it's not. So, yeah, and which our meeting in July will fall after the cottage, the week following that. So, what that
We
says.
don't
to-
have one in July. The tree
Hmm?
board doesn't have one in July. No, maybe it's land care that doesn't have it. When do you not have one?
December.
December, that's what it is.
Right.
Yeah, sorry.
So what it means is that in June, we'll need to have some plan. I will talk to Ellen. And we'll need to have some about how we can, whether we're doing a presentation or just a presence at the cottagers thing in July. We won't have the opportunity in July to make those plans. So we've been saying that we would like to take some time one, to talk about relationship with the Chestnut Foundation, and 2, to talk about what it is as a board we need, how we can educate ourselves and the things we need to educate ourselves with. So I'm thinking that those 2 things could be major part of our agenda in our May meeting, but I'm open to other
In
thoughts.
July.
Well, I'm talking about
Or May.
I'm talking about in our next meeting in May to focus on those 2 things. And then in June, we'll be looking at the cottagers
Okay.
thing. I'll also, does that, well, again, I want to know if there's any other thoughts that anybody has about topics that we need to be making sure we include, and we have pretty much open schedule in May. So at this point, any bright ideas?
Nope.
Okay. So then I'm gonna put those two items on the agenda for May. And say to everybody, if you have ideas in the meantime about any particulars about relationship with Chestnut or things that we need to, as a board, turning to our arborists, if there's things that you think would be important for the board to be aware of that relates to the work you're doing, and this would also be a good time to do that. So, just open invitation to everybody to put on your thinking caps and let me know before our next meeting what we can do. Okay. Looking further down, you'll see that in September, the question mark begin TCUSA. And then there's TCUSA portal open. And then there's Tree City USA recertification due in December. Each year we have the need to pull together all the information and prepare the report to Tree City USA to maintain our good standing with Tree City. It's a bunch of stuff, but it's tends to not, we take care of a lot of things. There's trying to think of an example. How much money the town spends on tree related things. I think we're generally pretty well covered. But there's also like the issue of volunteer hours. We had a number of volunteers at the plant sale on Saturday, and Tree City USA allows those volunteer hours to be included. So there, as we go along and do business, we're paying attention. We just accumulate the kind of points that are needed for that certification. Another thing is that I'm assuming, is it true that you're moving ahead with the plan to have an additional person get the training?
Yes, sir. We're going to look into getting Drew Brown. He's interested in getting certified. And if we have the funding this budget year, we're going to get him certified as an arborist also. So that'll help toward that.
Brad,
Just one second. And just to point out, that's the sort of thing where it's an expanding of our capacities. And I believe that would give us what do we call a growth of it, yeah. So
is there a form to fill out? How do we report those hours?
there is a form, and that's part of what we need to set up. I'm not all that familiar with myself.
I
It
would like
can
to
be
go ahead.
downloaded.
Yeah.
It can be downloaded from Tree City USA, and one of my tasks between now and August is to make sure I know how it all works.
Well, I'm planning as the land care, if this native plant sale, we had 3 chairs we had structures that we had programs, volunteer. Martha Campbell, Kitty Boucher, and Margot Smith, and they have a complete report and they can give us those hours, and I'd like to go ahead and get it turned in. So I'll just number those hours and email you. That's that. That's what we did with Ann.
That would help, yeah.
Okay.
So thought that I was having that. So this relationship with Tree City USA, it's an ongoing thing. It does require work each year to keep ourselves in good standing. But it's not all that onerous to have it work out in any given year. All right. So I guess that's probably it on that. On old business, next item is grant for tree inventory. So my recollection is that what we need to be able to do more tree inventory is some funding. And part of the funding issue is in order to get funding, we need to have a plan. And the plan has been to move from having a volunteer way of doing tree inventory to getting a company to do inventory for us in different sections of the town. So a key issue there is getting companies to do bids to the town for doing that. So we can know about how much it would cost, and we can then work with people who do grants to do that. We've had grants a few years for doing tree inventory. We did not get one. We applied last year, but we did not get one. And subsequently learned that the basic reason for that was because we hadn't really finished following up on the previous inventories we had done. So I don't know if we're done yet on that, but I know progress has been made. So
We are working on, and this also helps towards your Tree City USA stuff, is Daniel and I and Drew and the rest of the crew are working to try to close out the previous inventories, which is a large amount of trees that we found that are diseased, dying, or dead. And yeah, pretty much, I don't know a timeline because we have to get assistance from, a tree crew to do some of the trees that we're not capable of doing just because we don't have equipment to reach the height that we need to go. And as far as getting your bids in, if y'all want to talk about a date for putting out an RFP or RFQ, however, probably RFP, we could
well,
try to drum something
yeah.
together for that date to put it out.
To me, it doesn't make a lot of sense to be asking for bids when we're not really ready to do anything with them. That's the other side of the picture. I mean, so I think finishing up on what on the previous inventories is key for this. To my mind, it doesn't really make a lot of sense to be taking that next step until
And we made a big jump in it this last go around, and we're hoping to hit it again as soon as college is out. We've got that lull in between the college and when we've got the summer kicking up. We've got a couple of week lull there. We're hoping to do another section of Assembly Drive. And once we do that, the Graybeard section that we inventory, we can do that anytime. It's just having to deal with the traffic and everything on Assembly Drive. So we're open to do that as soon as college lets out. We can get us a good week up through there. We can.
Sounds like good thinking.
Yeah, we're hoping to finish up pretty quick. It's just taking us a little time to do it in between the crowds.
Good.
I apologize if I made it sound like I was being critical. You're another way in which we depend on your work. But
It's all good. It's just with the way the past 2 years have been, everything has been at time. We're doing our best to get this part done. That way, the Forest Service helps us. They can look at it and say, "Oh, we're making progress now. start doing the zone, we've already done that.
It's,
Speaking of Forest Service, I saw not too long ago that there was a personnel change, a woman in a key position, but I'm not sure about. I didn't recognize the position or the name.
I didn't recognize the position. Back on my notes. I'm sure it was probably Bruce Barber.
Things to learn. So, anything more about tree inventory? So new business, I put in their 22-23 budget. We had asked for a little bit of money to use for materials to use with cottagers meeting, for example, and other similar kinds of things. There's always a need to do copies and such. And so I think that we had asked for $100 for that. And we asked the town to also do another year of membership in the Chestnut Foundation. So where it's a total of $400 is what we were asking for town budget. I have not heard how that request has gone. I wonder if anybody can tell us.
Currently in the budget.
It's in the budget.
Yes.
good.
Great, great. So I don't know how it works to send in dues, but I don't know if that's a board responsibility or whether the town would just do it.
Personally, I mean, information about that, but the board doesn't. Recollection. So it's soon that our town clerk.
Okay. So-
And I could check with Ms. Murphy later this week and see how that got paid and the process that we need to go through to get that taken care of and when.
That would be great. Okay. So other new business. When to restart Ivy League? We've been saying that it's getting to be that time of year. Excuse me. And I have been thinking that sometime in May would be a good time to get going. So let's bury a note. Where are we at with that?
Talking with Mr. Wiggs here earlier this morning. You can look at either May 19th as your Ivy League date with the 26th as a bad weather day, or you can look at the 26th as your official day. Those are the two good dates that we have.
Okay, for me personally, the 26th looks better. But I could do it if it's earlier in the day, which it usually is. Well, actually, no, there's a third thing for me. So the 19th would not be a great time, but the 26th is pretty much open. How about any other folks?
26 would be better for me.
So, again, what I'm thinking here, and it's just my thinking. I've noticed driving up Virginia that some of the trees that we did originally still seem to have living ivy on them up higher, which says to me that we didn't cut everything we needed to cut. So I'm thinking that maybe we start off by going back to stuff we've done before and trying to make sure that it's done as thoroughly as possible before we move on to the next.
Is it just cut at the base of the tree? Is that how it works?
Yes, we just try to take the ivy back to the bark line and remove as much as you can, several feet up the tree, back down to the ground. And depending on how bad it is, some of those places on Virginia that was some of the biggest vines of English ivy I've ever seen. I mean, you had vines that were almost 5 to 6 inches in diameter. I mean, they were huge. And so getting those removed, you can cause damage doing it, pulling those roots from the bark. You can peel the bark off the tree. And if you're not careful trying to cut in, you got to be careful how far you cut in. You don't want to get into any of the inner bark, inner tree workings. And so some of those areas were really problematic, and that falls on me. I was supposed to go back and take care of some of those larger vines. We were literally out there with small crowbars trying to pull that stuff off of those trees. So I agree. I mean, if we could get, that first day just to kind of get everybody back in order and acquainted with the Ivy League, and see if we can get some more volunteers out. And some of the issue we've come up with, Barry and I rode around quite a bit last year, is finding a place where you're not going to trip and fall down the bank trying to get to the backside of these trees, and accommodating for most of the volunteers that are going to be with us. So there's few and far between that you can actually just get to from the road. You'd almost need your hiking gear and your boots and your pack to get down in there to some of these trees. But I think you're right. I think if we can go back through and try to make sure that what we did last year was thoroughly gone through, and the main portion of that ivy's pulled away, then we can kind of start working on the map that Barry and I had laid out. I can't remember how, there was about 9 or 10 spots, I think, off the right of way that wasn't on private property that we could get to fairly easily, and that was accommodating to most of the volunteers that we'll have.
We had, I think 5 or 6 people signed up for the Ivy League, some of which were repeats, but some of them were new people, names I was not familiar with. So that was encouraging. Plus, I think several people that were doing it last year will be able to continue. So looking forward to that. Yeah, in my experience, sometimes it's the little ones too that are there, because you have bark trees with fairly heavy bark, and you get little vines that grow between the pieces of bark, and they're sometimes hard to see.
Yep.
And even if you can see them, sometimes they're hard to get to. So there's lots of ways that ivy has figured out to survive.
Absolutely.
But I was actually kind of interested on Saturday, because there was conversation about between people who were aware of Ivy League and were really saying they want to get rid of ivy. Which you don't always hear that.
That's good to hear, because there's a lot of it.
So plenty of potential to make people happy. So I spoke about what I could do in terms of dates. Does anybody else have, would the 26th work as a date? Yeah, okay. Yeah. I mean, it's, I'm just saying what I could do. And if the board would like to pick the 19th, that's okay too. I just would not be there because I have a previous commitment. Okay. Well, we'll put in our order for a sunny day that day, or maybe cloudy. but no rain. Okay, all right, so 26th it is.
What have you done the 31st as your rain day? Oh, that's a trash. Oh, that's a Tuesday. We'll be closed Tuesday.
Especially in May.
Yeah, I
Okay.
think having a rain date is a good idea.
We'll be closed on that Monday, and then the sanitation pickup will be moved to that Tuesday on the 31st. But that won't have anything to do with
Traditionally, what time have we got done that? Has it been like 9 o'clock
it.
or
I think 9:30.
9:30?
We generally start at around 9:30.
Well, I think we're pretty much done, actually. Um, we've run out of agenda. Okay, so our next meeting would be Tuesday, May 24th. Thank you.
There we go. Like it.
That's all right. Thank you, Grace. Oh. Grace,
Absolutely.
I've got your little fruity cake thing in the back of the truck. Your little. Whatever. We're adjourned, yes. Thank you. Thank you, Jane. Thank you, Maggie.